Hi, Doc. Hi, Doc. Hi, Doc. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Prasad. I was just on mute.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, I'll be on mute. Why don't you continue with your presentation?
Is there anyone else right now, or I go?
I think you go because it's a time. So a lot of people do see it after the recording at their own convenience. So you can just go ahead.
All right. So, Doc, thank you very much so that it doesn't feel that I'm talking to some blank video. So thank you for joining. Thank you, guys. It's Sunday morning. I picked up the time so that you could sip cup of tea. It will be 10 a.m. for you and a wonderful time to catch up. But I guess you are sleeping just like I would tomorrow morning. Uh, Shalini set it up and she left somewhere for her work. And she told me that my talk has three parts. One is what do professors do? Which is really an enigma because most people, including myself, believe that we don't do anything. But of course, you know the economic reality that nobody pays for nothing, right? The second part was how I got into academics. And I think that is also an enigma because most people think that I would be the last one to get into academics. And the third part is what I do in my own research. So I'm going to structure maybe briefly the first three parts, maybe 4 or 5 minutes each, and then leave it for questions for the audience, which is, I guess, just Doc. And Doc mostly knows the answers to all the questions I have. So I don't know whether he's going to ask any more. Anyway, so let me start with what professors do. So to be frank, I actually never thought about this question for last 20 years when I am a professor. But since that question was posed to me, so I thought about it a bit. And then I say the best way to look at it is to see what do managers do? And the answer is very simple. They run companies. And then it realized to me that the answer is same. Professors run universities. And then I said, well, what does that mean, running a university? So if we think of university as a company, which is a really an interesting analogy, which most people don't do, it's a vast business. So UC Davis, you might be surprised, is a 4.5 billion with a B US dollars, just one campus. And University of California has 10 such campuses. And it typically does about $35 billion. So that's a large operation. You can think of $35 billion as our revenues. We have about 144,000 employees, which are administrative. About 20,000 of them, not of them, in addition to 140, we have about 20,000 as faculty. Okay, so we have about 160,000 employees. And that would be numbers not too different from Unilever worldwide. So Unilever worldwide would be 60 billion. And I don't know how many employees they have, maybe 200,000. So you can think about a university as a large corporation. UC Davis definitely is. So once you make that analogy, there is just a company. Then you say, well, what are the products of this company? And then broadly, you will realize that we make two products. Product one is called knowledge. And product two is called talent. They seem very abstract, but that's what we do. We make abstract products. Knowledge is really science preceding technology. So technology would be uh, uh, electric bulb or voltage transformer or a grid. Uh, and the science would be how does the electricity emerge, how does it flow, how does it disseminate. And you have four partial differential equations which James Clerk Maxwell wrote down in 1860s. And then there was light. And so there is science which precedes 30 years or more before the technology becomes. And it is this technology is what other companies like Unilever or any other company would buy. So internet. So Jeff Bezos, he is an internet, online retailing, AWS, all that stuff. But you go back and ask, why did Jeff Bezos come out in 95 and not in 1985? Why did Bill Gates didn't start an internet company? Or why did Bill Gates didn't have an internet company in 1995 Windows, when actually internet did exist? And the answer is that prior to 1992, when Bill Clinton released an executive order to make internet public, which is where you got the .com for commerce, internet existed between .mil, which is military, and .edu, which is education, and it existed for 30 years prior to 1992. Internet was invented by one man, Kleinrock, at UCLA, who still exists as a department chair in their electrical engineering department. And then other students of his advisor, who was at MIT, they started advancing it. And then we had DARPANET, which is what the military funded, and they and EDU became one. So prior to the birth of technology, there's 30 years of science behind it. And that is what we mean by knowledge. So that is our primary product one. The second product we make is called talent. Talent is you and I. So we are an output of some university. Generally, a top university produces top talent. But there's no guarantee of that. Other universities have done it. But at some point, if you're top, you will pass through top universities anyway. And so it's a big screening mechanism, but not the point of this discussion. The fact is that universities have product number two called talent, which is essentially their students. There could be bachelor students, master students, or PhD students. Bachelors and masters directly go to the companies. And companies buy the technology, which is a result of the science we produce. But we also make some other kind of students, which are called PhDs. And PhD students are either they go and develop the technology from the science that is being developed in that lab. Like my wife, she learned how to do cancer curing drugs in her science. And then he started a startup company in which she created a drug that actually cures cancer, which later on was bought out by a company called BMS. And they commercialize, distribute, manufacture, and the good old stuff. And so PhDs either become profs or they create technologies for the companies. Bachelors and masters as our talent, they directly join the companies, and companies then buy the technology, and this is managed by the bachelor's and master program. So broadly to summarize, what profs do is to manage this production process of knowledge and talent. So what is the production process of knowledge and talent? The production process for knowledge is research, and the production process for talent is teaching. So on day-to-day basis, if you see my job, I sleep for 9 hours because I need a lot of sleep for me to work efficiently. I work for about 10 hours, 8 to 12, 1 to 7, with 1 hour of sleep in between. So really, I sleep for 10 hours and work for 10 hours. We do research, and then only 3 months of the whole year, Jan, March, I do teaching. So the reason I mention all this is because most people don't know what professors do. Even I did not know that this is what professors do, or that this is what they're expected to do, or this is what they should do. And normally that's because we engage with professors as teachers, especially in bachelor's and master's. And so after that teaching is done, we think he must be teaching some other classes, and we go on with our merry lives. But that's not what happens in a research institution. I teach Jan, March, April to December. I don't teach diddly. So I teach 3 months. And of the 3 months, I actually teach no more than 100 hours. But I do get paid for 2,000 hours officially. I work more than 2,000 hours. So why would any institution employ you for 2,000 plus hours and make you work only 100 hours? Makes no sense. If that is all that we did, and therefore I must be doing something other than teaching in 1,900 hours beyond my 100 hours. And that is what I typically do. That is in fact the main role of a professor in a research institution like UC Davis or any other major institution of higher the reputation, higher the research requirement. And that's what most students come for. So if you think MIT, Harvard, Stanford, these are very illustrious colleges, it is not because they have great teachers. It is because they have great researchers. And that is the primary product of research institutes in the world. Research does not have the same prominence in Indian system, but it is changing. And ISB, for example, is really rattling the cage. And hopefully Suresh is going to do the same in Great Lakes. So I guess that's my broad description. To summarize, university is just like a company. Our products are knowledge and talent, and our production process is research for knowledge and teaching for talent. Any questions on this so far, Doc? Looks like nobody has joined, Doc. Doc is on mute.
Prasad, continue on with your 3 parts.
That?
I said continue on with your 3 parts that you are going to cover.
Okay, all right.
And then I will save my questions.
Okay, all right. So the second was
I'm the only one in class, so I'm singled out for all the questions.
No problem, no problem. And I know you are a student with a quick uptake, and so you may not have any questions if I did a good job of explaining in the first place. All right, so let's move on with the second question. Second question was, how did I end up in academics? Now that is a great question because all my engineering friends, as well as IMCAL friends, all of you guys, they know that I was not a natural born candidate to become a professor. And I was not. I was a very practical guy. In fact, my research is also very practical. I'll explain in my third part. And I didn't really care about academics. I cared least about professors, and I don't really care about grades. And so it was very unusual. And so the way it worked out is after I graduated from IMCAL 87, like all of you, I joined HMM, which was the Horlicks company. And I joined in sales. And I started out in Gujarat. So I started Gujarat sales. I ran it for 2 years. And then I transferred to Delhi in brand management, which is a head office staff function. Sales was a line function. So I did 2 years in sales, 2 years in brand management in Delhi. Along the way, I had a girlfriend. Her name was Chetna Rao. And she had left for US in 89 after 2 years. So I moved to Delhi, she moved to US. And she started a PhD in biochemistry. And the plan was she was going to come back after a PhD is done, and then we will get married around 93. And then, we would have children and we will grow up and the standard stuff. But she instead came back in 90, a year after she left, to give me an ultimatum that she's not going to come back because the research that happens in biochemistry in India, so Pfizer and Merck and other companies in India, is quality control. It's no research. So no research which transforms a science into a real new technology, which is in their case a drug, a tablet or an injection or a procedure by which cancer can be cured or HIV can be cured. And she had expertise early on in HIV, and then she moved on to cancer. And I, of course, didn't understand what does it mean. We don't know. I mean, we have huge Pfizer, huge companies. They have big budgets, R&D budgets, 15% of the balance sheet. And what do they do? And she says, oh, they do quality control. They don't do real science. And by real science, she means generate real science, new science that didn't exist, or use existing science, maybe last 10, 15 years. As I said, it takes 30 years of science to create a technology. To transform that into technology that leads into a practical drug or an injection by which something can be cured. But anyway, I was smart enough to know that this was not about science, technology, or drugs or anything. It was an ultimatum that either I come to US or we move on. And so I said, okay, I didn't want to move on. I liked her much. So I said, what does it take to go to the US? And turned out the answer is simple. You need a GRE and GMAT. And as all of you know, how hard it is to game a system of a competitive exam. I mean, we cleared CAT, we cleared JEE. I thought, oh, this is just GRE. So I said, no big deal. And so I started studying while I was on job, 1 hour a day, and took the exam. I got my admissions, and I shifted to US to do my PhD in marketing, because by that time I had 4 years in marketing in HMM, and I worked 1 year prior to joining IMCAL in Dor Oliver, which was B2B company, sales, so B2B sales. So I said, wonderful, I'll go there, get my PhD, and then I'll be Dr. Prasad Naik, and I'll work for McKinsey or Bain or whoever it is. And then life is back to normal. But that's not how it works, which I've learned much later on. And I realized that once you join a PhD program, they make you do research, not for the sole interest of a single company called client or the consulting company who does for the client, but for a much broader audience of all such companies, industry, or a conceptually a very similar setting, and you publish it for free. And I said, oh, wonderful. So I'm not going to be a consultant in McKinsey. They're going to give me a job in university, and I'm going to be a professor. I said, fine, so be it. And I went on the job market. I got a job at Cornell University. But Cornell University, unfortunately, is located on a mountaintop in the upstate New York. And they, even today, have no biotech cluster of companies. The closest company is like 2 hours away, called Corning Glass Factory. That's like 1,000-year-old technology. Of course, they have more advanced technologies, but still glassmaking is not, in principle, too novel. At least not as novel as creating a cancer drug. And they have no cancer company, so Chetna would be jobless. And so we found a job in UC Davis, whose dean happened to be from Cornell University. He figured out that I'm not signing off this job offer. And so he called me, asked me to come and give a talk, which I did. And then he offered me a job. And then he said, I will get you a job for your wife, not a problem. And you know, it turns out Northern California is a hub, one of the 3 hubs globally, which is the mecca of biotech research. One is North Carolina Research Triangle Park, one is Northern California, and the third is in San Diego. And so we have been here, and the That's how I entered academics. And I started doing research and teaching, which are the two production processes for us to generate knowledge and talent, respectively. And I got intoxicated in this process. It's a very beautiful job. Uh, you have no boss. Maybe once every 3 years, you get reviewed. If your performance is great, you walk through with a swagger. Research came, I was very fortunate that I was very lucky because I had a deep experience of picking right questions and right problems of interest to managers. Because of my experience at Dor Oliver and HMM, which is now called GlaxoSmithKline, and I don't think they call it anymore because Levers bought them, all their brands. So I could pick right problems, and I could bring math and data and all and embellish it. And I had a terrific run for last 20 years. It's a very competitive business. Only 1 in 10 papers submitted to a journal eventually gets published. And so it's very hard to come year after year after year after year, multiple papers. In the last 20 years, I have more than 50 papers. So it cannot be by chance alone. And so it's been very fulfilling run. I love my job. I work more than 10 hours every day. It's fantastic. It pays well too, so nothing to complain. It doesn't pay as well as being a CEO in the US by any means, but you know, it pays the bills, way more than pay the bills. You're happy, there's no stress. My hair is actually black. It is no dye. It's just my beard, which is natural now, which is a little bit grayed. There is stress if you are unable to perform and produce and publish research. But fortunately, I don't have much stress on that count, and therefore my hair is not gray. Most people lose their hair and definitely becomes gray or bald. So it's a very competitive, tough job. But I was very, very fortunate, and I'm very privileged to have this job. I was very lucky. And so I fell into it because of love. And then I fell in love with the job I fell into. And so life couldn't have been any better. All right, so that ends the part B of how I became an academic. Part 3 was, what do I do for research? Now that is, really, I can't tell that because I have 50 publications, so I don't know which one to focus, unless some of you are really live standing there and I tell you because you ask questions. I wouldn't know where to emphasize. Primarily, I can summarize, I work in 2 areas, advertising and platform marketing. Advertising, I do models which allow you to estimate how effective a certain medium is based on the data that you provide. Anything, social media, online media, offline media, banner, TV, radio, print, newspaper, out of home, anything, literally, PR. And then I'll tell you how effective each medium is. And then I will also tell you that what should be the optimal amount of budget you should spend for each region, for each product, for each media. And then you can back it up, what should be the total budget for the entire state or entire nation, all the media, all the product line, whatever subset configurations you need. So that's one research I do. I have more than half my papers in that area. The other half is an area called platform marketing. Platforms is really an old topic, but it has, because of the internet, really gained a lot of traction, and a lot of new questions and answers have been raised and answered. Platform is like an eBay, but it's not eBay. So it's an eBay in the sense that there is a platform which is independent of the buyer and the seller. So eBay doesn't make anything that is sold on eBay, and eBay doesn't sell directly anything that is sold on eBay. There is a seller who sells it, there is a buyer who sells it, and they just provide a venue, a marketplace, and some tools to do the transaction, the shipping, the fulfillment, and collecting the cash, and returns processes and stuff like that. So they are enablers of the marketplace. And then there are two sides to a market, the buyer and the seller. But it's not eBay's invention. Auctions have been around. Sotheby's is around for hundreds of years. Credit cards is a perfect two-sided platform. There are merchants who fund it, and there are users who use the card. And as more users use the card, the more merchants use that card, and therefore more merchants use the card, even more merchants, users start using the card. And so it's like a virtuous cycle that builds up. And generally you have to decide whom to incentivize more. Should you really discount and give it free to the user, or should you just discount and give it free to the merchants, and how will the dynamics play out and all that stuff. One of the oldest business on two-sided platforms is newspapers. Goes way back in 1900s. So there are readers and there are advertisers, and advertisers are not interested in that. They are interested in readers, and the readers are not interested in advertising, but they are interested in content. And so the platform provides the content for free, or maybe 25% price of being able to produce that content, and charge 75% to the advertisers, and that's how they make the money. So a newspaper makes content that attracts the readers, and because it attracts the readers, it attracts the advertisers. Advertisers pay 75% and readers pay 25%, typically. So that's the research I do on platform marketing. I'm actually going to be the Guru speaker for IMCAL in Calcutta on March 28th, Saturday. So if you want to know more about it, please attend. I get no commission, by the way, to generate the demand. If you attend, it would be a great party after the talk and even before the talk. So collect everybody you know in Calcutta and let's hang out. It will be a mini get together. You don't even have to attend the talk. We can meet prior to it and we can meet after it. All right, so that's the research I do, advertising and platform marketing. You will know more about platform marketing if you attend the Guru Speak, but otherwise, my internet, the internet links will have all my 50 plus papers. If you go on LinkedIn, there is a site, there's a little thing called publications, all my pubs. You click it, you will get the entire document. All right, so that covers all three topics of what do professors do, how I got into academics, and what do I do. All right, Doc, I'm done. It's about half an hour.
Thank you, Professor Naik. So question I had was, obviously what you said about creating talent and content, that's been the story since probably Nalanda University or whenever. Yeah. Question is, how is technology, distance education, and some of those things impacting or affecting colleges and college education now?
Good question. So you can think of knowledge and talent in a different metaphor. So you can think of it as a manufacturer and a retailer. Okay, so there's a customer which is a company, and they buy bachelor's, master's, or PhD. PhD usually are technology guys, but bachelor's and master's to run the companies. And so you can see them as retailers, teaching as a retail output. But you can think about, to teach, we need content. Okay, so what will we teach PhD students different from what previous generation of PhDs did? And so that requires new knowledge every single day. And that is created by the university, and that is knowledge. So new knowledge keeps coming up, which is taught to new students. Over the spans of 5-10 years, it changes dramatically, much more at PhD levels than at master's, and much more at master's level than at bachelor's, and much less at undergraduate levels, or below undergraduate, K-12 levels. And so it is more rapid change at PhD, and the change reduces as you go down to K-12. But new knowledge keeps coming up. And the knowledge generation part is manufacturing, and knowledge distribution is teaching or dissemination. So you can think of manufacturer and retailer. So now when they say there is technology like Coursera or 2U or all these online universities, they are entering the space of teaching. So in some sense, they are using all the knowledge that we create and all the talent that we created to make the courses for them. And they are offering a private label, a low cost version of the teaching that we offer. So it doesn't really hurt us. It is just that we have more competition. Our prices will have some pressure, fees and all that. But it is our own knowledge which will eventually be taught in Coursera courses. Coursera doesn't invent regression. That was invented by Carl Friedrich Gauss in 1795. They just disseminate. They are a distributor. They are a retailer. And so technology so far is only spreading the volume to a broader masses. So more and more people would like to know about business analytics or data science. That just increases the demand for technology. And so the main effect is that the demand for knowledge actually grows. And so to cover the courses, you need more knowledgeable staff. And more knowledgeable staff is what I call talent, which the university creates in the first place. And so it actually helps the university because of the technology. It hurts the university to the extent that some of their teaching students, instead of coming to university, start going to Coursera. So there is a little competition and collaboration both going on with the same effect. My assessment of that game is that the top 20 plus universities, ranking wise, in public eye, are not affected much. Those in the middle from 20 to 80, which is where we belong, are affected substantially because it cannibalizes more than overall increase in demand for MBA. And beyond 80 plus, really teaching level schools, they also benefit just like the top 20 because they really don't care about quality and they don't invest a penny in research. And so they are fully teaching schools and they directly compete at low price with the online courses. So they themselves adopt online courses as a game and they offer it themselves. And so it's a good thing for the society. It is a little bit of a bad thing for people between 20 and 80 ranked universities in the US, which is probably where I belong. So if you ask me, well, it doesn't hurt me, but it definitely hurts my dean, who is also, by the way, an IMCAL 83 batch alum. His name is Unnava Rao. Does that answer your question, Doc?
Yeah, that does answer the question. Thank you. So one other thing I have is you mentioned that you spend about 100 hours of your year in actual teaching and the remaining 1900 and more in research and so on.
Correct.
And in our WhatsApp group and here and there have been all these claims about Indian universities like IIMs, etc., wanting to focus more on research and so on, even the IITs and IIMs and everybody else. And other than the fact that it has prestige and the fact that you'll get better ranking and you'll be scored, as a practical need for what industry needs in the Indian context, do you think that's a way to go? Or do you say that they serve their purpose of being good teaching universities and producing talent that the industry needs?
So if India was insulated from the world, they could just remain teaching schools for the rest of their life and keep borrowing technology and science from the West. Uh, I just wrote a letter for full promotion of a guy from associate to full at Tsinghua University, which is the top university in China. Uh, his name is Ya Cheng Sun. I don't know him, but I just wrote his letter today and I even emailed it, so it's history. Fantastic. He has 6 marketing science papers. If you go on his website, write Yacheng, YACHENG Sun, Yacheng Sun. I never met him. 6, 4 market, no, 3 marketing science, 2 management science, and 1 JCR, which is world class. Universities in the US might need 8 to 10 of them to become full. But Tsinghua can produce 6. No university, including ISB, maybe Sudhir Voleti and some others has. So some. So maybe 4 or 5 people have. And I wrote their tenure letters too. ISB and some in IIM Bangalore, Sudhir Voleti in Bangalore. They have about that caliber and they are continued to remain productive scholars, not just past history, but that builds reputation. Everybody outside of India, when they go on the website, they know what is the caliber of your university in less than 30 seconds because they simply see the website and see how many centuries did you play? Do you play for test match or do you play for Ranji Trophy? And you know Don Bradman versus Prasad Naik playing cricket. Everybody plays cricket. The question is at what level of the game are you going to live? Are you going to produce Gavaskars and Tendulkars that even Bradman will tip his hat? Or are you going to say, oh yeah, I just play cricket at home, it kills my time? And I think you have to make a choice on where you want to be. You can copy and become number 2, which is what China was. But China has set the sights already to figure out this game that you can win business and wealth creation by borrowing technology. But you will always be the borrower of technology unless you become the producer of science behind it. So unless you know how atoms work, there is no way you can make atom bombs. And unless you know that rocket, the escape velocity got to be 7 miles per second, there is no way you can produce your own rockets, which will actually go outside the orbit. And so at some point, after you become number 2, if you want to catch up with the United States, you got to own science, not just technological dominance. Because technology tomorrow is a new technology. Maybe a year after, maybe 2 years after, maybe 10 years after. And so it depends where you are in the game. So if you are number 6, 7, 8, yeah, you can just keep borrowing what exists and move on. I also saw some discussion on should we need a bullet train or whatever. I sat in the bullet train in China from Beijing to Wuhan. It's about 100 kilometers. It takes 4 hours to go. It costs 522 renminbi. So which is, I don't know how much, about $80 maybe. 4 hours for 1,000 kilometers, Bombay Delhi distance by train, 300 kilometers per hour the speed goes. You can order food on WeChat, which is like our WhatsApp, across for the future station which is going to come. And the food comes at the station, which is delivered to the train, the guard, and the guard brings it to you on your seat. Any food you want on the train, and from any store, any restaurant, already optimized. It's not even there in US. They borrowed the technology of fast trains, super fast trains. And in last 10 years, it was German technology, it was French technology, it was US technology, and you can argue whose it was. But in last 10 years, they have more miles than all of the Western, European, and US miles put together. Now you're going to fight a war with them one day because they have to demonstrate technological dominance exactly the way they did in 1962. Because they could fly over Himalayan borders by an helicopter. Are we ready? And maybe business school is not the way to advance, but clearly ISRO is, and clearly IITs are. And so you may decide that, okay, management talent, what's the great idea in knowing consumers' preferences, this versus that, which is a technology we invent. And maybe more deeper technologies of harnessing energy and atomic and solar things, and putting man on moon and Mars and Jupiter or wherever, which may look distant, but it is a capability. And that acquisition of your own technology to have that capability requires understanding of science. And only when you have that understanding of science that you are ready to even contemplate advancing that science. And once you are ready to advance and you can advance science, that's when you are capable of competing with the United States. Otherwise, you're 100 years behind. And China has realized that they are still 100 years behind because they cannot advance science. But they will catch up. That's why they invite me. I go to Xinhua a month in a year precisely for that, to help them do marketing science. It's not on the same caliber as physics, but there are physics people who go that. And the US government knows that, and they have put ban, visa ban to go to China. And all this trade war, it is not about agricultural product or soya bean and war on that. It is exactly 5G and Huawei. They want to not advance 5G technology and have dominance of China on that. Anyway, so I think it is a choice for India to decide on how much and which technology. They have to go back further deep down into acquiring dominance in the science domain so that we can generate competing technologies. And maybe marketing and IIMs and not, but clearly engineering colleges and science colleges and cancer and life sciences and biology, we have to really play up the game. We cannot be number one. We can keep advancing technologies on borrowed technologies and be up to number 2 like China did. Does that answer the question?
That answers the question. Thank you. So that's it from mine. I think I've been privileged to have a 1-to-1 ratio of teacher to student.
It's like a PhD program.
like a PhD program, yes.
Yes, yes. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed the talk. It's about 10:17, so 45 minutes, I think is a reasonable time. In the US, we have 50 minutes clock for lecture and 10 minutes to walk between 2 lectures because the next class will start again. Hopefully there is somebody lined up, maybe not in 10 minutes, but maybe in 10 days. So thank you, guys. If you have any questions, feel free to ping me by WhatsApp, by Skype or Zoom or whatever, okay? Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Doc.